Hello, I'm Mercedes Stephenson, and this is the West Block, politics, perspectives, and players.
From an economic standpoint, I think next year is going to be a very big year. There's tremendous demand. You see it with the stock market, where the stock market's at 24,000, and we went through the worst attack we've ever had on our country. This is really the worst attack we've ever had. This is worse than Pearl Harbor. This is worse than the World Trade Center.
That was U.S. President Donald Trump. The Canada-U.S. border has been closed for over 7 weeks now, and the Prime Minister says there is no plan to reopen the border anytime soon. But the current agreement with the United States will expire on May 21st, and the president has made no secret of how much he wants to reopen the American economy as soon as possible. So, what should Canada do? Joining me now is the former governor of Michigan and former U.S. ambassador to Canada, James Blanchard. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you.
This is a dilemma for the Canadian government. How would you advise them to proceed on when they should reopen the border?
Well, I think they should reopen whenever they feel it's wise. I would tell you that Detroit-Windsor, which is really the busiest crossing, and I call it the cradle of cooperation between our two countries for over 100 years, there's a lot still going on, which is really good. Agricultural exports, both sides, are up, believe it or not. Manufacturing is down, but that's going to reopen starting next Monday. In the following week, Monday the 11th and Monday the 18th. The healthcare workers that people in the Windsor area provide healthcare services to the Detroit area, there's about 3,000 of them. They've been considered essential and have been going back and forth, as well as physicians from Detroit to Windsor. This whole cooperation is going to be celebrated, I might add, on Tuesday by the Mayor of Windsor, Drew Dilkins, and our Consul General in Toronto, Greg Stanford, and your Consul General in Detroit, Joe Cole-Martin. They're going to celebrate this cooperation at the border and hand out gift certificates to healthcare workers. So there's a lot really going on. The construction of Gordie Howe Bridge is proceeding. So there's a lot going on in spite of the lockdown on both sides of the border.
Well, and the flow of those essential workers and goods is so important to economies on both sides. But President Trump has made no secret that he's looking at a full reopening, not just essential goods. And the state that you're from, Michigan, we've seen armed men in the Capitol. They're not happy with the lockdown there. There's a lot of pressure in the United States to reopen. What happens if President Trump wants to reopen the border and the Canadian government does not believe it's wise to do so?
Well, just create a lot of confusion, like in Michigan. You know, our economy, we are still in lockdown till the end of May. Governor Whitmer is controlling that, not Donald Trump. Unfortunately, Mr. Trump has sent mixed signals to everybody, even encouraging states to disobey the White House standards. And I might add, by the way, those that went into our Capitol with weapons do not represent Michigan at all. Our polls show overwhelmingly the people of Michigan support Governor Whitmer, and I might add in other states, governors are getting very high marks, about a 75% approval, whereas Mr. Trump is getting about 44. So the governors are going to manage this, and they're trying to look at saving lives, not some political timetable to pretend that the economy is going to be all better right away. It's not going to be all better right away. So to the extent I give advice to the Canadian government, which is a sensitive thing, do what's right for your country. You're a sovereign nation. The cooperation between Michigan and Ontario and Michigan and Canada is going to continue. And I would like to think things are going to open up more dramatically in the weeks and months ahead, particularly this important manufacturing base that we have. But again, I mentioned agricultural exports have grown. They're more than they were between the U.S. and Canada, which is really good on both sides. This is really a good thing. Now, why is that? It's because people are worried about the food supply from other countries. And we have a safe, high-quality food supply on both sides of the border.
Do you think that there is a potential risk that the Canadian government runs afoul of President Trump if they don't agree to open the Canadian border when he wants to open the American one? And this is something the Prime Minister Trudeau has had to deal with before. And a lot of Canadians are worried, what might the president do if we're not on the same schedule?
Yeah, it's hard to know. I mean, you know, he's a fairly abnormal personality, to say the least. One minute he attacks Canadians, next minute he talks about how great they are. I would look more to the Secretary of State Pompeo or our Commerce Secretary, our people there. Look, most of the members of Congress, Senate, and House, all the governors consider Canada a very valuable partner that needs to be listened to and worked with, not lectured to or undermined. And that's that. As far as I'm concerned, that's the reality. The president is not often dealing with reality, whether he's recommending Clorox to disinfect yourself or foolishly labeling steel from Canada as a national security threat.
When it comes to President Trump and the looming election, some Americans have speculated that he might try to find a way to postpone it. Is that actually possible?
No. Under our Constitution and our laws, the election will be held on November 3rd. Under our law that's been there since 1845, before Canada was, well, I don't even know it was called the Dominion yet, but well, it was still British North America. But we've had this since 1845. And that will be the first Tuesday after the first Monday in November. That will be November 3rd. There's no way that's going to be called off, nor would the inauguration on January 20 be called off. I do know people are worried about it because, again, we have a president who is basically abnormal behavior. And it's really tragic that all of us have to suffer through this, especially our friends in Canada and our friends around the world.
The president has been pretty clear in calling out China, blaming them for the virus. The Canadian government has been softer in their approach. Do you think that the Canadian government should be more direct in their criticism of China, or do you think the president is offside?
Well, look, we ultimately have to work with the Chinese. I don't think anybody, and probably the same in Canada, believes that the Chinese have been forthright in the degree to which this disease was a serious threat. It's a closed society. The government is basically a dictatorship. So I don't think anybody's happy with the amount of information we received. On the other hand, we have to work with China in the years and months ahead. And it's just that simple. We have to work with them. We need to have a reasonable trade agreement, and I'm sure the same is true for Canada. Look, the president is, Harry Truman had a motto on his desk. He had a little sign that said, "The buck stops here." Mr. Trump's motto is, let's hand the buck off to anybody. Let's find scapegoats. Let's attack governors. Let's worry about China. Let's attack different businesses. I mean, it's a distraction from the reality that our president delayed substantially dealing with COVID-19. And that has aggravated not only the health of our citizens, resulting in more deaths than were necessary, but also aggravated our recession, which is now a very deep recession. At some point, we're going to have more people out of work than there are people in Canada. I repeat that. At some point, we're going to have more people out of work. We're already pushing, I believe, 30 million than there are people in Canada. This is a tragedy that we have to deal with. It's going to affect all of us on both sides of the border, our jobs, our families, the health, the quality of our civilization is good. So we have to work together. And we have to work with the world as well, Europe, China, Japan, Korea included.
That is quite the sobering number, and we appreciate your time and your analysis. Thank you for joining us, Ambassador.
Thank you.
That's all the time we have for today. Thank you for joining us. For the West Block, I'm Mercedes Stephenson.